welcome to the Bearhug Club, a pro wrestling podcast of positivity.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bearhug Club podcast. As always, I am your host, Greg, and I am joined by Garrod.
It's me.
What up, boo? So,
yeah, sorry to cut you off
and
steal the opening promo. I'm pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Can't complain too much. So, if you're tuning in, well, we're live, pal. So this is our first foray into trying to sort of live stream the pod. We're looking to maybe kind of make this more of a regular thing. We like the idea of getting that live audience in, and then when we've got the viewers, we would be happy to maybe like incorporate them into any discussion we have, maybe take a few questions, just open up the discussion as we try to aim to do here on the podcast. Obviously, before we get into anything, we'll just do a few of the quick plugs out the way. So, as always, if you want to find us on our different channels, it's the Bearhug Club Podcast for Facebook and YouTube, Bearhug Club Pod for Instagram, and Bearhug Club on Twitter. As you see now, we've got a Twitch channel as well, so you can check out there for any of the live streams. Things we've got coming up as well. We've been finally getting around to recording content for YouTube, so we recently uploaded the first episode of Outside Interference, which is the show where I get our non-wrestling fans on, and we just show them some content, get that sort of outside perspective on it. And early today we did a batch recording of matches you need to see, so keep an eye out for that coming to YouTube as well. Going into the pod straight away for this topic, we're talking about interpromotion in wrestling. So in regards to that, what we kind of mean is when other wrestling companies kind of get in bed with one another and like try to like mix talent, mix cards, you know, like how does it benefit? Like, has there been a good history there? And the main reason we're kind of drawing on this is because if you caught AEW Dynamite last week, obviously the big ending to that show was KENTA showed up in full Bullet Club garb and laid out Jon Moxley with the go to sleep. And it's the sort of merging of that feud from New Japan now carrying on in AEW. And the big thing around that was it seemed like AEW and New Japan were never going to have that working relationship, but it seems like the forbidden door is officially open.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's been sort of mini forays here and there. Obviously, you had, I mean, Moxley has been the US NJPW champion for quite a while now. You had sort of dabblings with Jericho here and there going over as a Painmaker. But I guess this is like a more official actual merging. And obviously we've been seeing the crossovers with Impact.
Yeah.
For the longest time, we've had the NWA crossovers. Obviously not as big of a story, I suppose. NWA aren't in the position to be able to do their shows the same way that New Japan are and Impact are.
Yeah, of course. It's quite interesting because I'm trying to think, and it feels like this is the first time where you've had sort of these at least four major promotions all at once kind of merging together to do something. I suppose obviously AEW is sort of the main sort of linchpin for that, and the rest are all kind of involved. So it'd be interesting to see if there's any carryover between them as well. Like, will we see more New Japan talent show up on Impact? Will Impact talent go to New Japan, or will any NWA talent show up there? So that's where it's kind of interesting for me. I think this is the first time you've had this many promotions kind of at least somewhat in the same vicinity of each other trying to work together.
I mean, I suppose the only other one I could draw to is the WWF, NJPW, and AJPW back in the 90s.
Yep.
Sort of had their whole thing. I mean, subsequently after that, New Japan never worked with the WWF, now WWE again, and then AJPW and NJPW became sworn enemies. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. I suppose this is the first time where we, like you say, we see, I I suppose the first time where you see Western promotions properly working together in tandem as well.
It feels a bit rarer for it, maybe because of just like, I think when I liken it to WWE or WWF when it was at the time, they've always wanted to be the wrestling promotion. They don't typically like to acknowledge any other, at least other promotions within the same country of the United States, which is probably why they were more open to things like working with those like Japanese promotions, or even with Mexico when they had the brief stint with AAA. I feel like with that, it always seems like there's just the ego of like Western companies where it's like, well, we don't want to. Well, if they do, it's very low key. Like you won't. The thing with the AEW one is quite exciting so far is that they've had their world champion appear on other like shows. Like he's been on Impact, he's main evented one of their pay-per-views with Hard to Kill. Whereas with other previous promotions, that was a bit rare. Like they would maybe give you some of the more lower to mid-card talent to go across rather than their main event stars.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is going to be who this really benefits, right? Because the one of the biggest problems with WWE is that there's been no competition for years. There's been no alternative, so why bother? And that's always, competition breeds innovation, hopefully, and bettering of the wrestling business. So, I mean, this merger or this working relationship that these companies have, you talk about the forbidden door. Tony Kahn said, I'll go with the full quote. Tony, when are you going to open the forbidden door? They tell him. When is New Japan going to come to AEW? And I kept telling them, I don't know where the forbidden door is. I don't know what it is. And then I figured it all out. The forbidden door is me. I'm the forbidden door. It was me, Austin. I was the forbidden door all along. It will be interesting how it works and who it will actually benefit. If you look at Impact, this kind of weak stretch doesn't really tell you anything. But if you look at Impact, they had lower viewers now going into No Surrender. And, is that indicative of AEW? Is it really not going to bring anyone over to Impact Wrestling? Impact don't do as well. They're not hitting the sort of near mill numbers of 700,000. They're averaging around 150 to 200,000 odd. Obviously, the biggest thing in wrestling is the demo, which is it doesn't actually matter how many people are watching, but it matters who in that how many people are watching. For example, the only thing that matters when viewership is on the line is are young people who will buy something watching, which is why AEW, even if they're not the most viewed, they are doing very, very fucking well with how many sort of 18 to 35-year-olds are watching. We'll see how that relates to Impact. Hopefully, it's more eyes on all of the products.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, if anything comes out of it, it better be that WWE take it as a kick in the teeth and pull themselves up by bootstraps. Grab a brass ring, if you will.
Yeah, I imagine because WWE's success is often hindered on how well they're doing at the time, and if any other promotion might be doing something that's grabbing their viewers away. Like when you look at the Monday Night Wars, it was because of the WCW moving slightly towards a more adult product that they eventually had to adopt that mentality and go forward with it. So if this was something that could potentially really draw viewership away, would WWE be open to like bigger collaborations? Because I mean, this is the thing. They do have collaborations at the moment. I mean, the fact that like Progress, Evolve, all like a lot of independent promotions are sort of in bed with them, and there has been talent exchanges with them. Like if you look at the last Super Strong style tournament Progress did, they had Kyle O'Reilly and Trevor Lee, who were both under NXT contracts. So they're not necessarily like against the idea of getting into bed with another promotion. It's just whether like that promotion's going to be on the same scale or scope as WWE is the main debate.
Right. I think that's just it. It's like, I doubt WWE would ever get into a working relationship with a company that's in a territory that they want, right?
Yeah.
For example, they're more than happy to go and work with Progress because they know that NXT UK is already bigger than anything there, or even just WWE's main product is going to be, bigger than anything there. Whereas they want to open an NXT Japan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they probably won't ever get into bed with New Japan because New Japan would say, no,
Yeah.
get out.
Please leave.
I mean, there's always a possibility they, work with, I suppose, Noah or something like that. There's always a possibility, but I don't ever see them working with any big promotions like this, which is why it's interesting. Because if you really look at like who AEW are working with, and they've been doing it for a long time, the door technically has been open for a while. This is the New Japan door, but then you look at the door to Mexico, and they've already have been working with AAA. Or,
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, they've had their titles defended on multiple AEW shows.
Right. It's mentioned every now and again. They should bring it up more. Part of Kenny's whole belt collector thing is the AAA mega title or whatever it's called. I believe that the Lucha Brothers can still go down and wrestle there and whatnot. Obviously, COVID depending, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think with AEW, it's just because they've always been willing to acknowledge that other wrestling does exist outside of the product, even before they had the New Japan relationship. Particularly if you saw the likes of Kenny Omega in a match, like you'd have people like Excalibur on commentary bringing up his battles with Okada, for example, how he is the best bout machine and he has those ratings to back it up through those kind of matches. I just feel like, if WWE was ever going to get into bed with someone, they just seem to be very reluctant to any company that could be a threat to them. And what I like about AEW is they're willing to be open, and because I think that's the kind of way you can move wrestling forward, is not like shunning other companies by trying to actually work together. And then that way you do get something interesting out of it. You're seeing other talent come across briefly. You're seeing other talent go there. So with that in mind, like, what ideally are you kind of looking forward to with this New Japan relationship kind of going forward?
Well, I hope it's just that. I hope it's them in bed together, e.g. the same bed. Whereas with WWE, I would feel that they'd be in the bed and the other promotion would be on the floor.
Yeah.
I hope it brings more eyes to New Japan. New Japan are obviously branching out with New Japan Strong in America. They're trying to big up that that sort of branch of them. I hope it brings more eyes to Impact. I hope it brings more eyes to AAA. I hope that eventually we get these mega pay-per-views. You think about the stories that have been told through promotions. The biggest one being, to my mind, the biggest and best one is going to obviously be Kenny versus Ibushi. Eventually,
yeah.
The only person to ever kick out of the One-Winged Angel is Ibushi. The Golden Lovers is one of the best stories in wrestling. I think eventually, if they are able to do a heel Kenny AEW champion against, maybe he has collected all of these world titles eventually, and then he goes to face the final one, that he hasn't got. He goes to face Ibushi.
Yeah.
This unbeatable Kenny. And then finally, Ibushi, puts him down. That will be a money match, especially if it's like a co-brand pay-per-view where it's on both networks. They've done that sort of thing before. I remember the early AEW, before it was AEW pay-per-views, were part run by New Japan and part run by Ring of Honor, where you could watch it on. I'm pretty sure you could watch it on Ring of Honor, Fight TV, and on New Japan World as well.
Okay. Were these like the all in, like just the pay-per-views before they even had a title?
Yeah. Because obviously I believe there was a lot of animosity here and there with how they left and how they sort of tried to, there was probably a lot of thinking, maybe even with just the wrestlers themselves, maybe even not people behind, but people like the Elite going and taking the goodwill of that and making something of their own. If they are able to actually bring up viewership to every single promotion, and push each promotion to just, bring it, then it's that literally nothing should come bad of it. The only thing that ever happens with all of this is ego getting in the way. And in all fairness, you can't really have wrestling without ego. It's part and parcel,
Which brings up a good point then, going back to obviously you said, obviously the big money match there is Omega and Ibushi. If they're going in both as champions, is there that possibility that one of them could walk away with both belts? And then that means that company's belt is technically with this rival promotion, even if they are in partnership.
It depends how closely the relationship goes. It's such a weird time to do it.
Yeah.
And a very difficult time to do it.
I mean, travel alone.
Is very difficult. Yeah. Being able to move these wrestlers here and there. For example, if they wanted to do an invasion angle and the only person that could arrive was one member of the Inner Circle and Pretty Peter Avalon or something to New Japan, it wouldn't be much of an invasion. It'd be interesting. I hope that it leads to big type of pay-per-views where we have that clashing of everyone. Imagine a pay-per-view where you've literally got the NWA World Heavyweight Championship on the line. You've got the AEW World Heavyweight Championship on the line. You've got the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship on the line. You've got the Impact World Wrestling Championship on the line. You've got like every tag belt, every women's belt. It would be insane.
Yeah.
You could pair up the likes of, you could do a stable versus stable match, right? Inner Circle against Chaos.
Yeah.
You could do the Dark Order against LIJ. You could do so much. There's so many possibilities, and it's one of those things where everyone is just fantasy booking, but I worry that it will be over before it begins.
Yeah, I think with, like we said there, with the issues of COVID restricting travel, I think the smart thing for them to do is not to go all in at the very start of it. I feel like right now, if they just maybe have, because right now they've obviously got a lot of moving parts, if they obviously keep the focus with this sort of like version of the Bullet Club with Omega and the Good Brothers going on with Impact and what's happening there, that's going to be like a decent little thing happening there. And then if they want to keep, maybe for the New Japan for now, just maybe focus on the Moxley Kenta feud, because I think this is going to be good for New Japan in the regards that like now they do have a weekly TV like platform to really sort of help push this feud along a bit further and get some steam back into it, given it had to be delayed previously because of the fact that they couldn't travel before. Like, it was only just at Wrestle Kingdom when Moxley came back and announced, obviously, that he's back with New Japan and can wrestle for them again. And the match with him and Kenta is finally starting to build a bit more.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I again, going back to the ego thing, right? You look at when things have been done before, and you look at, was it Collision in Korea? Do you remember that?
Yes, yeah.
It was a New Japan WCW pay-per-view, and it's the highest wrestling gated pay-per-view ever because it was held in Pyongyang. Actually, I think I have some notes on that.
It was like held in like a massive stadium, wasn't it? It was.
I believe it's the biggest stadium in the world.
Yeah.
In North Korea. Yeah. So the Collision in Korea, or officially titled Pyongyang International Sports and Culture Festival for Peace, or PISC for short, which I think the main event was Inoki versus Flair, which is, that right now is like a Okada versus Cena.
Yeah,
or
it's on that level.
Reigns. practically bigger than that, really.
Oh yeah.
I think the max attendance, because it was a 2-day event, they're well ahead of their time.
Yeah.
The second day, I think, had a reported attendance of 190,000. I believe Meltzer reported it lower than that, which isn't surprising. Also, there isn't much footage from this for obvious reasons. It being North Korea, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's one of the ones that you can't find on the WWE network, as much as I would absolutely adore that. But
Isn't
again,
it kind of contested as well that fans were kind of made to attend it as well?
No, in North Korea, do you think people were made to go to the Pyongyang International Sports and Culture Festival for peace? No.
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 I mean, the card alone sells it without anyone needing to be forced to go.
I wouldn't have to be forced to go.
Yeah, we wouldn't.
No. But I don't know how many of us were there at the time. But again, back to like ego. Inoki himself, if you know anything about the man, is a very he fits in wrestling because he's a very ego-driven man. There was a point in New Japan's history where he basically tried to just change wrestling entirely to MMA.
Yeah.
Because he was like, "No, this is better. This is fuck it. Let's just hurt each other."
He essentially just got like legit MMA fighters, put them in the ring with wrestlers, and went, right, this is a shoot now for a lot of matches, and it just fell completely flat on its face.
Yeah, and that's, again, we'll see how egos drive what happens, because in this predetermined sport that we love, it's sure predetermined.
Yep.
But if a promotion comes along and says, I'm putting my foot down, my champion goes over, my guy goes over, and then he goes over, and then I want this guy to go over, and I want her to go over, and these people to go over. You just kind of, there's gonna be an impasse somewhere where a match has to go on, and these people some people need to win and some people need to lose. Another thing you have to think about is New Japan doesn't have a women's division. They've been looking at more like Joshi wrestlers and like Stardom and things like that.
But they own the guys who own that own Stardom, right?
Yeah, but I believe it's Bushi Road is the company. I think that's the parent company that owns everything. I mean, again, we'll see how that's happening. In the women's division right now, arguably, there's more crossover than just Kenta showing up. You've got the tournament that is like the US based wrestlers and the Japanese based wrestlers. As a side note, Maki Ito better win, or else I am part of the Ito Respect Army, as everyone should be. But yeah, I mean, again, I just hope that it's going to big up everyone at all times. New Japan just had a new TV deal in America, I think. It might have been on Access or something like that. We'll see. All it takes is one company to just unravel it a bit. One ego to just say, my guys aren't going over.
Yeah, yeah. I think that'll always be the issue, is that they will always start these things with the best of intentions, and then eventually somewhere down the line there'll be a match that they want to do, and then it'll be button heads over probably who they want to win. Personally, I don't know. I think Tony Khan's got a much a good business mind and a very open mind when it comes to this kind of thing. I think he might not. If Vince McMahon had this relationship with them, put any of his stars on, he would either want his wrestlers to win or to be more of a no contest, especially if it was those bigger names. I think with at least AEW, I don't think he's necessarily going to have that thought process. I think he's not going to totally mind if some of his bigger talent loses. I think there'll always be that chance where New Japan might give him the same rub where some of their bigger names might lose to his talent.
I mean, I hope so. If this year we get, like, let's say they expand the G1, right?
Yeah.
And they add a couple people in each block or maybe even just take a couple people from AEW or one person from AEW, one person from Impact for each block. That would be absolutely fucking crazy. The biggest wrestling tournament in the world already, which is just New Japan, becomes literally the biggest wrestling tournament in the world. Imagine they expand the G1 to be like they have a US G1, Japan G1, and then these people fight at a certain point, or maybe I don't know how they do that. I suppose it would be a massive bloody tournament. Maybe if you win the US G1, you fight for the US title at Wrestle Kingdom, and if you win the Japanese G1, you fight for the IWGP title, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then you could even just trade a couple wrestlers. So you could send a couple of Americans over. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think about how is best to do it. Because you don't want to almost sully the G1 or anything as prestigious as any of these companies have.
Yeah, I think what'll definitely be something that we'll see more of is it's quite a big thing within Japanese wrestling anyway, that even before you're massively on something like a New Japan card, they often encourage wrestlers to go kind of abroad and sort of do things in like America. Because I mean, that was the big thing, is like how Okada was in TNA very briefly, just kind of, I guess, getting to grips with like how the Western style might be. So maybe even if that was just something that come out of it, that'd be cool to see, like send some of the more, again, like lower to mid card talent across, just to kind of let them have that experience. And then again, that's at least enough to draw eyes on the product, by the fact that now we've got an AEW guy here now, and then we've got a New Japan guy here in AEW. That's at least something in and of itself. Or even you can just basically have interesting cross promotion along the lines of how I think it was WCW and again New Japan, where you had an NWO unit in Japan, for example. So that's again where stables might bleed over a bit, because we're already seeing it on Impact with this reunion of Omega and the Good Brothers. Maybe that will lead into having Bullet Club Japan, Bullet Club America, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean that would be interesting. Obviously, you've got the story of like, is there one true leader of Bullet Club? It could be a Kenny versus Jay White type deal. If they make a mega massive stable, that would be insane. You do run the risk of doing an NWO, which ended up with how many fucking members? 40.
I think at one point in WCW, it wasn't just the fact that there was just so many members in the stable. It was the fact you had NWO, you had NWO Wolfpack, you had the Latino World Order. They just basically splintered it into like numerous factions and basically watered down why the NWO was such a cutting edge thing at the time.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the excursions and things that they do in New Japan, it's probably one of the best ways to do it. You look at the amount of wrestlers that have come through the New Japan dojo. They start up as young lions, completely stripped moveset. They're all taught a Boston Crab, how to do a drop kick. They all wear, just black trunks. That's it.
Yeah.
Jay White went through that. So many other wrestlers went through that. And then they get to a certain point, they tell them to fuck off to somewhere. They'll either send them to Rev Pro, they'll send them to Impact, like you said, or they'll send them just to somewhere, maybe in Mexico, just to learn a style, develop a character, and then come back. If that kind of talent relation is available through all of these promotions, and AEW send some of their guys to go and be young lions, that's absolutely mental. Firstly, it also already lends to like just some great stories. Like you have AEW wrestlers taking a bunch of young lions under their wing. You have some AEW wrestlers going over there, and the story could be that they're not really understanding the culture, and they have to find a stable to help them, or maybe just by default they're probably sent to Bullet Club or something.
Yeah.
One story I'd really like to see is when John Moxley went over and sort of had his US run, he became good friends with Shota Umino, who is Red Shoes' the referee's son.
Okay.
And Shota he was, because the Young Lions in New Japan, they're basically the ring crew, right? They just hang around the ring, give ice packs to people, help carry people out, set up, move people away if like something's happening, and it's kind of that like classic wrestling thing of like, you don't get in the ring until you've set it up, and you pay your dues type thing. What Shota was, he was basically like, I think it just started with him, giving an ice pack to Moxley and all this kind of thing. And it got to the point where like they were just a team, and he never called him Shota. Well, he occasionally called him Shota, but he just like, he'd drag him like to like after every match in New Japan, they go back and they like do a little promo.
Yeah.
He'd always drag Shota with him, and he'd just call him Shooter the whole time. I would fucking love John Moxley Shooter combo where because I believe he's on excursion now, or was supposed to be during COVID. If he was able to go and learn from John Moxley and came back as this fucking Shooter character, mwah, mwah. I love it. came back with some red shoes, of course. Everyone loves some red shoes.
Absolutely. No, I think there's just so many possibilities. The one thing I would definitely be very happy to see, correct me if I'm wrong if they've ever wrestled before, but the idea of having a really solid feud between Pac and Ospreay now just kind of writes itself, in my opinion. I think they might. Have they ever wrestled on the Indies? I think they might have.
But it's at the point now where it's would be completely different. They've so come into their own and honed their character. They're both pretty much at the top of their game right now.
Yeah.
I would love that. Maybe even like Pac goes over and tries to, maybe he brings Death Triangle or something, and tries to fight Empire, or what is it called?
It's Empire something.
I think it's called like the Great Empire now.
Yeah.
Or something of the sort. That would be really fucking good. Jeff Cobb against Penta, Great O'Khan against just Pac. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think it just writes itself. Like we're saying, it's definitely going to be interesting going forward. I think there's definitely going to be. I don't think they're going to go full on with it too soon, and I think it's still going to be a big ask if we see some of the bigger names come across. I mean, Kent is a pretty big one in and of itself, given he's still kind of riding that wave of leaving WWE and kind of sort of showing what they kind of missed out on, in my view.
I think because every wrestler, he was Hideo Itami in WWE.
Yes, yeah.
Kenta, half of the wrestlers working today owe their moveset to Kenta. He was pioneering moves, and he's so incredibly good. And I believe that AEW are the company to highlight that. And, he shows up on Impact. They do the same. He's doing great in New Japan. Joined Bullet Club, which was pretty cool. He turned on Shibata, which was perfect.
Yeah. But we should probably maybe look at, I guess, some more examples of maybe when interpromotional kind of did pay off. So one of the big examples I could kind of find was the working relationship that WWE and ECW had back in the 90s, because it was that was sort of where it did sort of work, because I think it seems like Vince and Paul Heyman have always had at least some kind of working relationship and can kind of somewhat be in synergy. So their main working relationship was ECW talent briefly appeared on WWE. I think they were at an In Your House show in the crowd one night, because I think they were based, it was at Philadelphia. Then they showed up in Raw where Sabu jumped off the Giant A. But then after that, it was mainly just to kind of exchange talent. So you'd have ECW guys come across. I believe Too Cold Scorpio came across, became like Flash Funk or something like that. They still kind of had to put their WWE spin on the character. But then WWE likewise would send across some of their talent that was still not necessarily on the show, but like in training. So I think people like Droz went across. That's kind of like a decent little showing of when Interpromotion has sort of worked in the past. It wasn't something that was too grand in the vision, like they weren't necessarily advertising it, but at least there was something there that showed that they could work together.
Right. I suppose the worry is there a point where it gets too big, or it's doomed to fail? Obviously, that kind of thing has happened in the past, like New Japan and WWE never working together again after what was it, Wrestling Summit 1990.
What caused the fallout of that then? Because I'm not completely familiar. Was it just?
I'm not entirely privy to it. I'm sure there was a lot of going ons behind the scene. Maybe it just came out that it wasn't very good for business in the end. Which could end up being the case with what's going on now. Maybe. I mean, one of the biggest problems is that wrestling isn't cool anymore.
I don't know. I mean, it feels like it's sort of been the most popular it's been.
We're in the bubble, I think.
I mean, I guess, but I mean, at the same time, when you look at, I think in being in the UK for sure, it feels like it's more popular than it's ever been. When you consider the fact we actually have a scene to be proud of now. WWE has its own program with NXT UK now, so maybe that's sort of why we have a bit of a rose-tinted glasses view of it, if you like, because we're in kind of a hotbed moment, even if COVID sort of caused everything to be more or less be on halt for now. But even then, I mean, the fact like New Japan's trying to branch into America shows that at least they're going through their biggest one of their biggest points at the moment. It was a thing where people would have probably never seen that day coming, but now it looks like there could be the potential that they might actually have some success over here.
Well, success and it not being cool, I wouldn't say related. You look at WWE and they hit the lowest all-time for Raw ever, which was like 1 million, 1.2 or something like that. And you compare that to 8, 9, 10 early noughties and 90s and whatnot. Not that TV ratings are the be-all end-all. They're really not.
This is the issue with it now.
The internet age.
Yeah.
But my point is, they have hit that low, yet are making more money than they've ever made ever.
Yeah. Although
traded company.
I mean, yeah, because you've got to take that into effect. I mean, fair enough. No wonder they're making the biggest things ever by selling the network to Peacock for $1 billion. I think a lot of people can say, well, that's why they've had the highest ever. But then the fact that a company's willing to pay for that shows that wrestling does have that popularity. Otherwise, it would if wrestling isn't that popular at the moment, there's no way they could have got $1 billion for that.
I don't know if that's the case. I think because they're not just paying for pay-per-views as they go, right?
Yeah, I mean they're getting one of the biggest wrestling library, I could argue,
right,
on the planet, because it's not just WWE, it's WCW, it's ECW. I'm assuming all of the independent stuff they've got in there now, whatever else that they've managed to buy over the years, stuff from the 80s and 70s, all kinds of stuff.
I mean, almost when you think about it, $1 billion isn't even that much in the grand scheme for that, because you're how much? Let's look at how much Netflix paid for Friends.
Okay.
Right.
Do a bit of research.
Yeah. How much did Netflix pay for Friends? Just for 2019, just for 1 year, it was 100 million.
Okay.
And that is for how many seasons of Friends did they do? 7, 8?
10.
10. All right. Cool. This is Friends, the amount of content you have for Friends. This room is the WWE library, and it's ever expanding. And if anything, that 100 million for Friends is probably a bargain for them.
Yeah.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do. They're probably planning on themselves using that as a tool and bigging it up.
Well, I mean, to that end, if we're kind of sticking on with that a bit, it looks like what we kind of said was true, that WWE, now that they've had this Peacock deal, they're looking to do that in other countries as well. So there's been word that they're putting out the feelers to see if they could sell the network to somebody in the UK to take over. I mean, I can't really think about who they might sell it to. Possibly BT, given they already have. Does BT have like their own streaming or catch-up service? Given that they've already got wrestling.
I think they have a BT Sport app. I think.
Yeah, so maybe something like that where they're going to give them a X amount of money just to have the network exclusively there, which means we'd have to swap subscriptions, which would be fun.
Okay, so NBC Universal is paying $500 million to remove The Office from Netflix. It's one show.
Wow,
you know,
that's insane.
I really don't think $1 billion. It sounds like a lot, and I'm sure they'll big it up to their shareholders as a lot.
Oh yeah,
but it's the entire library of all wrestling ever, and it's not that much. The Office got 500 mil.
I mean, could you really put a price tag on the network and their entire back catalog and whatever's involved with it? And that's the thing. Like, what if that isn't enough? Then what would be?
Okay, but
the price tag.
There is no more Office, is there? There's no more. There's no more Office. There's no more Friends. It's done.
Yeah.
Right. They're only paying for the rights to restream something. What Peacock are doing is paying for the rights to restream things, keep up the library, and everything else that's coming next.
Mm-hmm.
They're paying for WrestleMania, right?
Which is going to rake in a decent amount for them.
One WrestleMania should really be like, it should be a shit ton of fucking money.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like widespread appeal of wrestling is probably down, which is why people aren't watching it on TV. Occasionally you'll get some internet hits, and we're in an internet age, but this is the WWE network, which is internet streamed.
I just think across the board it's harder to see because you've got to factor in everything. I think it's not just the case with wrestling, it's the case with all TV, film, and music. It's no longer about the sales that people are paying for a pay-per-view or buying a physical thing. If you take music, for example, now they judge everything not only on album sales, but you've got vinyl sales, you've got streaming, which is probably the main way they're trying to sort of like branch what's like the hottest thing at the moment. And I suppose in that regard, like we'll never see. I think it'll be a rare, or if ever we'll ever see Raw, for example, pulling back in the 9 million viewers that ever used to have. I think a lot of it is obviously even before streaming, it was because people could do catch ups, so they didn't have to watch it live anymore. They could just basically watch it when they wanted to. I think that's where you'd have to pull all the data to try and see if wrestling is in a bit of a lull period. You'd have to see what the viewership when a new episode goes up on the network. What's like, are people recording it and watching it later? That kind of thing.
I believe by most metrics, it's relatively down. Not to say it's not viable. Obviously these companies are making money. AEW was on track to make their money back in the first year.
Yeah,
and that was not by most estimates what was going to happen. But there they are, and they've already been signed on for 5 more years and a second show.
5 more years, and I think they're doing incredibly well with things like merchandise. I mean, the fact that obviously even before they started, they had when they started, if you want merchandise, you'd have to get off Pro Wrestling Tees. Now they have their own web store. They're bringing out DVDs. Like, speaking as the guy who collects wrestling figures, like they're selling incredibly well. Like I'm part of several groups, and you see people all the time struggling to get a hold of any new ones that come out. You have to be really on the pulse with it. And then there's obviously the hype around the video game as well, which they're kind of really bigging up and could be a massive seller for them as well.
Oh my god, dude! Imagine if the fucking video game is cross promotion.
There we go. So now you can finally get some. I mean, with the exception of Fire Pro World, we'll finally be able to have like dream matches like that. Should be insane.
That would be mad if I could. Oh my god, that would be so cool. That would be so fucking cool.
So I mean, again, that's just something else where it seems like, I guess, wishful thinking about where Interpromotion could go with this. Hopefully, things like that could come out of the woodwork for it. I think ultimately it's exciting to see what they're going to do with it. I think that's the main thing. It's going to be interesting to see like how far they take it, how far it's willing to go, what talent could we get out of it? Could we see big things? Are we only going to see medium things? Are we going to see little things? Anything else you want to kind of add on that?
I think that mainly gets our rambling thoughts in a bow, I'd say. Headlines are, I hope that big egos don't get in the way and ruin it. Yep. I hope that it's amicable for everyone. I want Impact to get a better viewership. I want New Japan to do well. I want AEW to do well. Believe it or not, I want WWE to do well. You know, because I fucking love wrestling.
That's the thing.
Why I'm, bloody here.
That's why we do this. We don't want to see one company fail over the other. We want all wrestling to be in good health and to have things like this, because this is the kind of thing that can really sort of change wrestling if they can prove Interpromotion can be successful for both parties, and if they get egos out the way, it's going to bring massive amounts of money and hopefully audience back to the product.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I want, wrestlers to get healthcare and things like that. But baby steps, I guess.
Yeah.
Baby steps. I'd like them to not be independent contractors when they're signed onto a contract that is like exclusive and they can't work anywhere else. Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. I mean, fingers crossed we'll see things like that happen over the next year now that Biden's in. Like we both
if this is good for AEW, Impact, etc., and they offer that, then WWE is not going to look that enticing anymore.
No. It's going to hopefully bring about positive change, and that's what we're all about here. Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us this week, guys. We hope you liked the new live format of the show. We're looking to hopefully bring this back and keep doing it each and every week. Just to get the plugs out of the way again, if you want to find us on the various different channels, it's the Bearhug Club podcast for Facebook and YouTube, Bearhug Club Pod for Instagram, and Bearhug Club for Twitter. As mentioned at the start there, we've been working really hard on getting new content out for the YouTube. So the first episode of Outside Interference went up this week. We've just been recording some matches you need to see, so keep an eye out for them. And hopefully lots more other great stuff coming forward. I think that's all from me. So take care, everyone. Have a good night.